some people, like, they say they get, like, heat stroke, or, like, they're affected by the sun, or, like, even, like, a, like, disorder you can have where it's, like winter depresses you, but it's, like, with him, it's, like, something crazy happens whenever, like, there's heat, and that's kind of a problem because he's living in Algeria, and it just makes him do, like, weird stuff.
My favorite part about nature, I guess, was when he's sitting out on his balcony, and it's, like, it's nice, windy, cool, and I feel like Camus even writes differently at that point of the novel, and it's just so relaxed, and he's so at peace. And I think it really shows how external things like nature affect us so much. And I think that that's kind of a piece of existentialism on how we interpret those existential, because those existential things are permanent, we don't affect them, but how they affect us is interesting.
So the first time, like Vincent said, that we see the sun affect Marceau is at his mom's funeral. And while he's walking to the church, we would expect him to be sad and mourning and maybe even crying. Instead, he's focused on the heat. And on page 15, he said, "The sun was beginning to bear down on the earth, and it was getting hotter by the minute. I don't know why we waited so long before getting underway. I was hot in my dark clothes." And then on the next page, we see him talk about the sun again. He said, "The glare from the sky was unbearable." So with these three quotes, we see he's on three consecutive pages, he's talking about the sun. So that's obviously dwelling on his mind more than his mother's death. And this is showing his focus on the physical world, because he notices, like, the smells and the heat and his fatigue, and these aspects of nature make him feel dizzy and unable to think clearly. The next instance we see nature is when Marceau kills the Arab. We see Sartre's choice, because the first time Raymond and Marceau meet the Arabs on the beach, Raymond hands Marceau his gun and says to shoot him, and on page 56 he thinks, "It was then that I realized that you could either shoot or not shoot." So he has this choice. He can shoot or not shoot, but whichever one he chooses, it'll affect his life. And he decides not to shoot, but then on the way back to the beach, he's going back to the shade of the rock, and we see the sun affect him again. On page 57, he says, "The sun was the same that it had been the day I buried Mammon, and like then my forehead especially was hurting me, all the veins in it throbbing under the skin. It was this burning which I couldn't stand anymore that made me move forward." So it's hard for him to go on, and the sun's making him feel drunk again. And this is like the dizziness example when the first time when he was on the beach, and also at his mom's funeral. And Marceau, he can't stand the burning of the sun, so he moves forward to kill the Arab. The next time, when Marceau's in jail, Maria comes to visit him, and while he's talking to Marie, he's more focused on the heat coming through the window and the bright light. Since he's been locked up in his cell, it's been dark, and so it's like a shock. It says, "When I walked in, the sound of the voices echoing off the room's high bare walls and the harsh light pouring out of the sky onto the windows and spilling into the room brought on a kind of dizziness." So we would think he would be more focused on Marie, since she's his girlfriend, and would want to talk to her, but instead he's focused on the voices around him and the light and the heat. And he refers to being dizzy again. So we see that nature has this dizziness effect on him. And this is his concentration on the natural events happening around him. Next, at the trial, the heat affects Marceau again. On page 102, he said, "My head was spinning with heat and astonishment," and then he blurted out that it was because of the sun. So the judge asked Marceau the motives why he killed the Arab, and he says it was because of the sun. He shows no remorse for the crime he has committed, because he thinks it only occurred because of chance circumstances, that the sun was really bright that day and he was hot, and nature made him dizzy and worn out, and that eventually led to the killing. And this meeting between man and nature ends in a meaningless act, because when Marceau was on the beach walking toward the rock, he had no intention of killing the Arab. So this just goes back to the existential belief that life is just a series of events, and there was he wasn't intending to kill the Arab. And then I have this picture, and I think it depicts Marceau's inner state of mind and perspective of the world, because he, as we have seen, that Marceau, it makes him feel dizzy and disoriented, and this dizziness leads Marceau to kill the Arab. And also, Marceau sees the world as chaotic with no order, which is an existential belief. And this shows Marceau's chaotic perception of the world.
What do you guys think of the picture? Do you think it represents anything?
I think it's a good to like illustrate how he really feels, because it's like the heat, especially the heat, just completely like skews his vision of everything. And it just really affects everything he sees and does.
And it looks kind of like a journey to nowhere, which is kind of his whole life, like nothing actually gets you on.
Yeah, it's like the railroad track curves, and it's like you can't see what goes on past the end of the track, so I feel like that's kind of like what he's thinking. He doesn't know where he's gonna go. Dave?
It kind of makes you feel like how Marceau was feeling a bit, I guess, because to me it's like even annoying to look at how it's distorted and stuff, and he had like the feeling of the heat as well as long as this, and kind of puts you in his point of view. He was just trying to get out of this and try to get past that bend, I guess, into the shade.
Yeah, it's like a bend in the road.
So the Arab was just like another obstacle in his way.
Yeah. Anyone else have more thoughts on it? Existentialism in The Stranger. Okay, so I started with a background on the author, Albert Camus, and he lived from 1913 to 1960. And he is originally from French Algeria, so that explains kind of the perspective that Marceau has on the area from the book, because the author lived there for quite a while. But he was interested in philosophy and attended school in France, and really tried to become very involved in the movement, and did not consider himself an existentialist. He actually considered himself an absurdist, which means that while existentialists believe that life has no meaning, absurdists believe that life is absurd, and there's no reason for anything that happens. It's just crazy, and it goes every which way, and so it's a little bit different from existentialism. And he believed in the total absence of hope, which is a quote from his work, The Myth of Sisyphus, which means that there is no, it kind of just goes back to the idea that there's no afterlife, there's no higher meaning, and that there's no hope for anything after this world. So it really is reflected in the novel. But for the background of the novel, it's set in French Algeria in the mid-20th century during a time of extreme racism and conflict between the Arabs and the Frenchmen who lived in Algeria, which is a country in North Africa that was originally inhabited by the Arabs. And it really does parallel like almost kind of like the Europeans coming to America with the Native Americans, because it's like that was their land, but they were pushed off it, they were discriminated against, and they were not punished. The white people were not really punished like you would think for like hurting the Native Americans as were the Frenchmen and the Arabs. So there's a lot of parallels between the conflict here and in other points in history. And the background of the novel focuses on our protagonist, Monsieur Marceau. And he's kind of a strange man, doesn't really, kind of goes through life very aloof and nonchalant about everything, and doesn't seem to care about his life at all. And it kind of explores the absurdity of the justice system of Algeria, given the very like skewed trial when Marceau is punished, because he's not punished for killing an Arab. He's punished because he's more of a threat to society than anything else, and the prosecutor believes that he could potentially hurt other people, and he's not fit to be living, and the Arab is not even related into the trial. So that's part of the kind of like absurdity of what went on in the Algerian courts that Marceau recognizes, but doesn't really do anything about because he doesn't care. He's an existentialist. And it also explores the absurdity of the world in which Marceau lives in. He sees many kind of like absurd notions, such as Raymond's relationship with the Arab woman, how he really treats her horribly and even beats her, but he doesn't even get punished for it, like they said in the last presentation. It's like he goes down to the police station, the officer just lets him go. He's not even punished for hitting a woman because she was an Arab. He was let completely off the hook. And it's also I feel like Salamano's relationship with his dog is also a very absurd notion in The Stranger, because it's kind of parallels Raymond's relationship with